Um, Ladies and gentlemen, we're just about to kick off. Thank you. My name's David Skelton. I'm Deputy Director here at Policy Exchange. Thank you so much for battling through the horrible, horrible spring weather at the moment. We're delighted to be working with City Year on this event, who I think are a great organisation doing great work in our inner cities. Looking forward to hearing more about their work later on from Cyan. It's tremendous to have such a stellar panel for the event this evening. Shirley Sagawa is the author of The American Way to Change, How National Service and Volunteers Are Transforming America. She was also an appointee in both the first Bush, the Clinton and the Obama administrations, and was the first managing director of the Corporation for National and Community Service. Nick Hurd is the Minister for Civil Society. He's been actively involved in these policy areas for many years and is a minister responsible for national citizen service. And Cyan Morgan is a City Year volunteer in King Solomon Academy in Westminster. Really looking forward to hearing more from her about her work with City Year throughout this year. I think there's a few big questions which we're hoping that this event will address. Firstly, is national citizen service a potential solution to so many entrenched social problems? Will it help disengagement? Will it help narrow the class gap and have people engaging across class boundaries? Will it help tackle the growing issue of young people not in education, employment, or training? We're also hoping to ask, is there a social and economic case for national citizen service? Should it be compulsory, which is a question that always comes up when this issue is raised? And, of course, what are the lessons from the USA? And hopefully, Shirley will have some, if not all, of the answers to those questions. Over to you.
Thank you. So it's a great pleasure to be here, and I really want to thank City Year for giving me the opportunity to come over and have a chance to see all of you. And my gosh, thanks to all of you to come out in this rain. And I suppose you're used to it. And I was smart enough to bring rain boots, so I'm enjoying being here. One thing I want to start with is I think sometimes we have different terminology, apparently, over in the US than here. And a couple examples, one, as you talk about NEETs, we call them opportunity youth. And when you talk about national citizen service, you're talking about a concept that we often refer to national service as meaning a full-time, full-year experience. So that's what I'm going to mostly be talking about, and I didn't want to confuse anybody in kind of making the translation. Had a chance to see City Year this morning, City Year London, and that is an example of national service in the American sense, but I really think that the program here is fantastic, and Sophie's direction and her team are really putting on an amazing example, and I urge everybody here to go take a look because it will give you a better idea of what we're talking about. I had the privilege of working with President Clinton in the startup of Americorps, which was, I hate to say, 20 years ago. And what sort of emerged out of the last couple decades of the experience in the US is this understanding that there is a kind of human capital that is being put to amazingly good use by some of the more innovative organizations and agencies in our country. So it's not kind of, what we would probably call incidental volunteering, people who can give an hour or two a week or maybe show up for a really fun cleanup in the park for the weekend, all of which is fantastic, but not what we're talking about. And it's not full-time jobs in public service either. So we, as have whatever you have, teachers, public servants, people who work in nonprofit organizations, as their full-time jobs. So we're not talking about that either. It's something else. It's the people who are willing to, for whatever reason, take a year of their lives and work for practically nothing to help solve a problem that the country is facing or that their community is facing. They're willing to show up every day. They're willing to be there the whole day. They're willing to be counted on. And that's a kind of human capital that there's not really a great international term for. So perhaps we'll have to invent one that communicates better sort of across the pond, as you all say. We see, though, that this has turned into an incredibly valuable resource in the US. So I'll give you some examples. We had a chance to codify some of this in legislation that we all worked on, the city folks, and John Bridgeland, who is, I wish was up here instead of me, because he would tell you a lot from his perspective as President Bush's White House advisor on service, among many other things. But we, a few years ago, had a chance to codify some of this in our laws, so I'll share with you some examples. So in education, which is clearly relevant to today's topic, City Year is a great example of what national service is doing in the U.S. through Americorps. We're putting near-peer young adults in schools to help reduce the dropout problem, which is one of our biggest problems, in an evidence-based way, tying what the young people do in the school all day to specific outcomes. And it's actually one of the reasons that so many private sector organizations want to invest in City Year along with the government is actually getting outcomes that you can document. But there are other education programs as well. We've got Citizen Schools, which works against the STEM issue. Too many young people, not enough young people are graduating with skills in technology, engineering, and mathematics and science. And so they are bringing people from the community who have backgrounds in those careers into the schools to teach after-school programs. But they couldn't do that if they just said, okay, yeah, I'll come. They have to have Americorps members who kind of provide that glue and supervise those volunteers coming into schools. And it's been tremendously effective, and again, another growing program. We also work on other issues. So another area that Americorps members are terrific at is disaster response. So much so that our Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, decided that they would rather put money into Americorps members doing disaster response and recovery than to pay consulting professionals. So they actually created a FEMA Corps that has now, it was put to the test with Hurricane Sandy in New York and New Jersey and Connecticut. And the FEMA Corps believes that it will save $60 million a year as a result of investing in this kind of human capital instead of part-time, older professionals. And they were also excited about the potential for drawing young people into the field of disaster response, because a lot of our public service type careers are kind of aging after the baby boomers, who kind of were really drawn to that ethic of service, are now entering retirement. I could give you lots of other examples. I won't. Health is one, though, I feel like I should share, because we have lots of good health programs, one of which is the Community Health Corps, which partners with community health clinics to get people in the community to engage in healthy behavior, to help doctors and nurses make sure people keep their appointments and are following up on the instructions they get when they leave, to try to bring, reduce lead in the community and increase community gardening, all those things that create health. So I could go on and on and on. And you're probably thinking, well, this doesn't have anything to do with NEETs, only the education part. But in fact, a lot of the people serving in the Corps are in fact young people who would probably not otherwise be employed and are not in school. So it's become, because we have a real diversity of people serving, it's become both a way of providing service that helps this population and engaging them in serving others, which is a really powerful way to change their self-image as somebody who's kind of a failure. Like, I don't have a job, I'm not in school, I wasn't college-bound, but instead I'm somebody who's an asset to the community who can really help. So that's been very valuable. So it really is a benefit to the people serving, and it's a benefit to the community, especially programs like City Year that are bringing people who have vastly different backgrounds together, putting them on the same team, and making them work alongside each other for a year. They are not going to leave. I've heard such wonderful stories of people who kind of made great friends with somebody they would probably actually never have met were it not for the program. A young man who came out of, who joined the Corps because he was on work, he was on release from sort of a halfway house kind of situation after being criminally found, I don't know what the word is, court involved. And, and a guy who was on leave from Princeton, they became fast friends. So you end up with these great connections across society that you just don't get even, in the US, which we always think of as being so tremendously diverse. We wouldn't get these kinds of outcomes, though, if we didn't have a programmatic structure around the experience. So it's not, you know, I was joking earlier, if you kind of went up and said, oh, well, you know, we've got all these great people who want to volunteer in schools, let's just encourage that. Well, it's not going to happen. You know, you don't just get up and say, all right, you know, challenge everyone to go work in the schools, because the schools are going to say, no, thank you. As many schools in the U.S. have said to volunteers, you know, we don't have the capacity to manage that. What happens with City Year and with a lot of programs in the U.S. is that you actually fund the structure that makes that kind of human capital effective. And the largest funder of this kind of infrastructure is the U.S. government through the Corporation for National and Community Service, which funds Americorps. And so Americorps puts in place the program that leverages this great, you know, not completely tapped asset of people who want to serve and spend that year in service. And in the U.S., we've had this year a record number of applications filed for Americorps. Over 700,000 Americans have tried to apply, and there are only 80,000 positions. So we're getting a, you know, close to a 10-to-1 ratio in almost every program nationally. So, you know, our feeling in the U.S. is we're leaving. You know, if we can't find more resources to support national service, we're leaving a great asset on the table that our country could leverage. People who are willing to serve for practically nothing for full time. And so a lot of creative thinking is going on now, but how do we kind of augment what's coming through the Americorps funding stream with other agencies? The Department of Education just announced it's putting, you know, millions of dollars into a school turnaround corps. We're expecting to hear soon some other announcements from education-related agencies, and I've mentioned FEMA, and you know, there's a whole list of agencies that are thinking about this. And we're also trying to think of other clever ways that we can engage people in service. For example, veterans coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan are having a lot of trouble reintegrating into the U.S. And one thing that we've found to be effective as we look at programs, there's a program called The Mission Continues that takes wounded and disabled veterans and places them in nonprofits for 6 months of full-time service. And these people, these young people, are tremendously mission committed. Like, you just don't sign up to go if you don't have your heart, you know, wanting to serve others. And they come back and they feel like, you know, I'm being treated like I'm weak. Their self-image is kind of destroyed. So by putting them to work in a Boys and Girls Club or a, you know, program, a fire department or some other public service, helps them restore their senses of themselves, and they're finding that their reintegration experience is much stronger. So we're trying to add that as a benefit under the GI Bill, that you don't have to go right to college, you could spend a year of service. So we're all trying to be terribly clever in this time of budget constraints. How can we actually use this type of human capital and leverage it to the benefit of everybody? So I want to leave you with that. I'm happy to talk about it more, but I'm really eager to hear from the rest of the panel, so I will stop now. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I hope you're well. My name is Cyan Morgan. I live in Woodford Green and I'm 23. Last year I graduated from Brunel University with an economics and business finance degree, which I'm very proud of. It was a hard course. It was a 4-year course, but within that 4 years, I had a placement within IBM, and I worked in the finance department. However, that year was a rough year. I didn't really enjoy being in finance. However, when I got back, I had the chance to go back to Dominican Republic and do 2 weeks volunteering in Dominican Republic by making cement, building basketball courts for the local people, and teaching the locals English. So that was a very good experience for me. So after uni, I got the volunteering bug, and I decided to join City Year, as it's a year, so it's structured, and it requires me to dedicate my time for a year. I wanted to give back to my community in which I live in, and City Year is a national service program. And this year, they recruited 112 young people, and they took us into inner city schools to counteract underachievement. City Year creates small teams of 18 to 25 years old and places them in challenging areas around London to support young children. At my school, which is King Solomon Academy in Edgware Road, there are a complex mix of children ranging from SEN, speech and language difficulties. Over half of the students qualify for free school meals. We struggle with my teams over there, dyslexia, autism. They come from low-income families. Over 75% of them have English as an additional language. My role is to counteract that, and how we do that is that I'm assigned to Year 7, and I help support all the science lessons within Year 7. I'm involved with the lesson planning. I create and tailor the work to suit the children that struggle by taking them to the back and helping them with these lessons. I have been allocated 12 students to work closely with and be an additional support. With one student, I have to read with him daily to improve his vocabulary. These are just some of the examples that me and my team do. Others are leading activities. I have our football, basketball, netball, and we help students with homework. So we stay after school to help them with their homework, because if they go home, they're not doing their homework. So we stay and we help them. The KSA slogan is climbing the mountain to university. And in our school, that's a big mountain, because we struggle with these factors. The school days, KSA does this by longer school days. My team get in at 7:30 and we leave at 6. And we have high expectations from the staff and from the pupils. There's excellent teaching and exemplary behaviour, and we have to know every child, inside out. Therefore, there's more time for learning. Each member of my team had to meet these high standards and requirements, and we did, and we still do. What I find special about CY is my team, and working with people that I would never come across if I didn't join CY. You've got Kavita, who's 23, who's driven. You've got Yasmin, who's 23, who's optimistic. You've got Lucy, who's 22, who's just efficient. You've got Emerson, who is American and has bundles of energy. He's fired up all the time. You've got Raisa, who's 22, who's over there, who's lovely. You've got Rosie. Who's 24, who's so knowledgeable, very knowledgeable. And you've got Ed and Alex, who are just great guys. Just great guys. So there's such an amazing group of people, and I've just showed you the mix of ethnicity and backgrounds that we come from. And if it wasn't for City Year, I wouldn't have met them. Working with children and serving with CY gives me more skills. Skills that I believe that employers would want. Presentation skills, like if it wasn't for CY, I wouldn't be up here now. I teach lessons, I teach science lessons to people that don't understand English. My communication skills, keep in charge of the classroom, have work shadowing opportunities with Deutsche Bank in the CSR department. Amazing opportunities. And it's not just me. There's other people around the City Year that are not in my team, but they work in other schools. So Abigail, 24, she works in Gladesmore, Tottenham, which you all know where the riots kicked off. She joined City Year because she wanted to positively impact the lives of young people. She loves it so much that she's coming back to stay for another year. You've got Carsten Lobo, who's 22. He works in St. Luke's, Islington. He joined CY, he joined City Year because he wanted children to love education as much as him. Through City Year, he has gained networking skills, working in a team, presentation skills. He presented to over 100 people, and in that, he grew in confidence. Then you've got Jordan, who is 18, who didn't go to uni, but through City Year, she has gained so many things. When a child says thank you to her, she feels like she's making a very big impact. She leads and organizes sessions such as Young Heroes for children, and this enhances her organizational skills and leadership skills. When I asked Jordan if she was employable after City Year, she said yes. And Jeremy, 22, William Ellis Camden, he wasn't sure about his career before he joined City Year, but through City Year, he's now going into teaching. If I asked, when addressed with questioning, do you think, are you employable after City Year? He said yes. And back to me, my mentor's from Deutsche Bank, so even if I wanted to go into finance, that is a great opportunity for me. She's helped me with my CV skills and networking opportunities. And just to leave you with a story, one of the children in Year 7 called Sabah, she's short. She's like here. She's adorable, and she's a tomboy. She doesn't really like. She's not really a girly girl. And one time I was in the playground and I asked her, she was sitting by herself, and I asked, Sabah, what's wrong with you? And she said, Miss, I don't want to talk to you. And then I walked off, and then I came back, and I said, Sabah, what's wrong? And then she started crying, like dramatically crying, Jerry Springer crying. So I went back to Sabah, and I said to her, Sabah, what is wrong? And then she was like, Miss, they keep calling me short. And with KSA, because it's so structured, you can't get it's hard to depict when someone's bullying someone. So she was getting bullied and she was suffering in silence. And I went over to her and I just said, Sabah, as long as you're comfortable within yourself, that's enough. You don't have to please people. You don't have to live up to people's expectations. You are your height and you're going to have to live with it. And I spoke to her and I just instilled confidence in her. And through that, she got up, got the basketball, shot a three-pointer. She's on her way. So through that, it just shows that if you just give your time to people and just encourage them, you can change someone's day, even if it's a smile or a hug or a wave. So that's my story of changing someone's life. So thank you, guys.
I used to spend a lot of time in politics exchange when we were in opposition, and I associate it with some really good thinking. And it's very nice to be, very, very nice to be back. And I congratulate you on focusing on this issue, because I think the potential of it is enormous. And Shirley did a magnificent job in actually just painting a picture, really, of what a country can achieve if it has a vision for developing its human capital through the concept of service, where there's a vision and critically where there's cross-party support for this over a period of time. And I think there's something very, very important in that. And Cyan brought all this to life. City Year, or CY, I think, as we're now being encouraged to think about it, is great. And I'm really pleased that it's flourishing in London. And Cyan, you're a fantastic ambassador for it. You did a great job there. I want to talk about this through one prism, really, which is the question about how we help our young people succeed in a world that is increasingly complex and challenging. Growing up in the UK in 2013 is a lot more challenging than it was when I was 16 or 17. The world has changed enormously. Much more complex, much more challenging, much more interconnected, difficult. And therefore we have to think really hard as a country about how we help our young people succeed. And you will have noticed, I think, that all the parties, politicians of all colours, are generating a blizzard of ideas about how we do that, thinking harder about early intervention, thinking harder about how we make schools more rigorous, thinking harder about apprenticeships, thinking harder about all the traditional sort of public policy stuff, all of which is massively important, and there's some good thinking being done. But actually what interests me is the question around the importance of helping develop character skills, and the degree to which that is important in helping young people succeed. And I can put it very simply. I held a meeting with 50 of our National Citizen Service graduates with 50 of the biggest employers in the country. And I remember the HR guy from Boots standing up and saying, this is exactly what we need. Because, you know, these days we're not just looking at exam results in young people, we're looking for something that we call character, was his word. And so the kind of skills he's talking about is the skills that other employers are talking about. And it's things like grit, resilience, self-confidence, self-esteem, the ability to get on with people from different backgrounds, from different places, the ability to communicate clearly, a bit of get up and go. You can add things to your list. But it's these character skills that interest me and which politicians haven't thought, I don't think, hard enough about over the years, particularly if you believe, as I'm increasingly persuaded by the evidence base that is growing, particularly out of the United States, of the importance of these character skills in terms of underpinning the chances of a child succeeding, in terms of that child's perseverance in school and in the workplace. And if you haven't read a book by Paul Tough called How Children Succeed, and you're interested in this space, you should. You should also listen to Anthony Selden, the headmaster of Wellington College, one of the most forward-thinking educationalists in this country, now increasingly vociferous about the need for us to think not just about how we develop cognitive skills in our young children, but also how we think about developing these character skills. I think it matters, and I don't think we've debated it enough, particularly, again, as the evidence seems to be there and accumulated. Actually, these skills can be developed, and particularly through the experience, the journey of service to others, servicing in community. And that's what we're talking about. That's what is increasingly interesting me, both as a parent, but also as an MP, spends a lot of time in schools talking with young people, and as David said, the minister responsible for this thing called National Citizen Service, which we're developing. Let me take a minute to go back into the root of this initiative, National Citizen Service. 2005, David Cameron, leader of the opposition, one of the first things he did and said was stand up and say, I don't think we do a good enough job as a country in helping our young people make the transition to adulthood. And he issued a challenge to policymakers, government, voluntary sector, business community to think about how we could construct, in his words, a modern version of national service. Has no military connotations or associations, is not compulsory, but pulls together young people from very different backgrounds and pushes them through and stretches and challenges them through a common experience that stretches and challenges them, but also helps them to develop some really valuable skills. And that was his challenge. Some people went away to think about it, and I'm delighted to see Tim Lawton here, my colleague, in this room, because his role in this cannot be understated, one of the principal architects of this when we were in opposition. And this year, ladies and gentlemen, 50,000 16 and 17-year-olds across the country will be doing their National Citizen Service over the spring, the summer, and the autumn. And between them, they'll be committing something like 750,000 hours of their time in terms of service in their communities, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And what they do, just to give you a minute of what they do, because this is our version. You know, we're just starting. This is our version. We take young people together from very different backgrounds, and this is critical, because this is a chance to spend time with people you would not otherwise get a chance to spend time. This is a chance to understand people you would not otherwise get a chance to understand. If we care, and we should deeply, about social cohesion in a country that's getting increasingly fragmented, these opportunities to mix people up are absolutely fundamental, because it's by doing things together that you build the trust that underpins that type of social cohesion. And the kids absolutely love this element of it. Absolutely love. Time and time again, comes up at the top of the things that they appreciated most about this program. They lived together for 2 weeks. The first week is spent doing outward bound stuff, and we know the value of that in terms of building self-confidence, building the ability to work in a team. It's huge fun. They're bonded. They come back together and live again together for a week, developing independent living skills, perhaps living on a university campus. And during that week, we're helping them develop other personal character skills and gradually making them aware of things in their community they perhaps they hadn't thought about, like homelessness in Harrow, where my constituency is. Young people were introduced to homelessness as an issue. Most of them never considered that we had a problem with homelessness in Harrow. And at the end of this journey, they're challenged to work together as a team to commit 30 hours to develop a social action project in their community that they have designed, they have decided on, that they lead, they are responsible for. And the empowerment underpinning this is immense, absolutely immense. So on this journey, we are helping them to develop some of those character skills that I talked about at the start. And what have we learned? We've learned something very clear. The young people absolutely love this. I mean, this is a tough crowd, 16, 17-year-olds. 9 out of 10 would recommend it to their friends. And let's be clear, we're asking at the moment them to give up 3 weeks of their summer holiday to do this. 9 out of 10 would recommend it to their friends because as many of them have come up to me, and I've talked, as Tim has, to hundreds over the years, many of them come up and say, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. And they know, because all this is guided, it's not just, it's guided with reflection. They know what skills they're developing, and they know how valuable they are. And it is amazing what happens when you connect a young person with their power to make a difference. Many of them have never been asked. Many of them never even thought about this being part of their lives. But the spark that it lights in a young person when actually you say, you you show them how they can make a positive difference in their communities. They absolutely love it. So there's something very powerful happening here, which is why we're growing it to 90,000 young people next year, and the Prime Minister's ambition is to make this available to every 16 and 17-year-old in the country. And for those of you who want evidence and want to see value for money, because this is a big investment, the independent research we've done tells us that for every pound we're spending, at the moment we're getting £2 back in terms of social and economic value, basically in terms of increasing the employability of these young people. So there's something very powerful and valuable here which we're looking to build on, not just in terms of expanding national citizen service, but actually the thought we had was, look, if this is so good, if this is such a powerful experience for a 16 or 17-year-old, why can't we make this kind of experience available for young people between the age of 10 and 20 through this process of growing up? Why can't we make this available throughout their schooling experience, and much more when they get on into university, where there's already fantastic growth in student volunteering. So the Prime Minister is up for this, and he's asked me to work with Dame Julia Cleverden, that some of you will know, to go around talking to the voluntary sector, talk to schools, talk to business community, to see whether there's an appetite to stitch together the fantastic social action programs, the service learning programs that we've got in this country, to try and present a more coherent offer for young people, to start as early as 10, but right through into university. So whether you call it social action or service learning, it's something that we could make part of the experience of growing up, part of the experience of going to school, part of the experience of kind of helping your chances of succeeding in life, part of the DNA of this country, something that we welcome because we know that young people benefit from it, we know that schools benefit from it in terms of the kind of energy and participation and concentration levels back in school. We know that businesses benefit from it because they're getting more work-ready kids, and we know that communities benefit from it because the range of voluntary organisation in this country that doesn't want to be connected with young people. So there are so many goods here. We're really ambitious to do more. The potential here is huge, which is why I think it's fantastic that Policy Exchange have got us together to have a conversation about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Three excellent, important contributions there to this debate. We've got about 20, 25 minutes for questions from the audience. And there's a gentleman in the front here. There's a roving mic on the way to you.
Thank you very much. My name's Tim Cross. I retired from the Army a few years ago as a general and come on here quite often to these sort of debates. Really interesting, thank you. I was very struck by a couple of things. I don't want to say too much, but I was very struck by your comment that this is a year and people's commitment to that, and what we are talking about 3 weeks plus 30 hours. That's my first point. I'm very struck by limiting this to young people. I think one of the huge changes going on in society, people like me, I'm 60, huge wisdom, huge experience. How do we tap into that generation to become part of what we're talking about here? I think I'm out speaking quite a lot of things. I'm meeting a lot of old people who want to feel engaged and involved, and they have huge talent, huge capability, and they don't want much for it. They just want to be given the opportunity. I could say several other things.
Yeah, I'd love to respond to that because the U.S. actually does not have an age limit on Americorps. So you can serve in Americorps, 60, 70, 80. And in fact, many people do. We have one program called Experience Corps, which is solely for older adults, and it works in schools. And it's only 20 hours a week because what they've found is many older adults don't want to work full time, but they're very happy to give 20 hours, and they're getting tremendous outcomes from that 20-hour period. So it's definitely part of the design, we have in the U.S., and it makes lots of sense demographically. In the U.S., 10,000 baby boomers are retiring every day. So it's a terrible, you know, when we talk about wasted human capital, you know, folks are going to live a long time. And actually, the studies show that volunteering actually helps people stay healthy and live longer. So there's all kinds of good reasons to invest in that as well.
Tim, I mean, you're entirely right. I mean, you know, we're just at the start here. You know, America is so much more advanced, and perhaps some of the culture and the value sets are different. But we're just at the start. You know, we're starting with young. With young people. Your point about tapping into the experience, expertise, and talents of the older generation and connecting the two is massively important. We actually did try a UK version of the Experience Corps at STIFT. And so we're rethinking that. And we have been, at a time we got very little money, through something called the Social Action Fund, we are beginning to look at experience and funding some projects that are set up exactly to do what you're talking about, which is to try and present really exciting, valuable opportunities for older people with talent and experience and networks to use those to make a big impact, whether it be supporting young people or a range of other things. And so there's a program called Professionals, there's a program called The Amazings, and various others that we're kind of seeding just to see what works, because the opportunity is enormous if we get this right in a British context.
I think with City, because it's 18 to 25-year-olds, they're trying to counteract youth unemployment as well. So for me, for instance, I told you, I stated that I've gained teamwork skills and presentation skills and communication skills. I've just come out of uni, and you have a wealth of wisdom. I'm not doubting that, but I don't. So to go into City and to gain all the experiences is valuable for me. There's a lot of people coming out of uni who think they have a degree and they can go straight into a job. So I think where City is coming from 18 to 25, if you can spend your time volunteering for a year, you're working with real professionals, then you can gain the experiences. Whereas there are roles higher where you can apply, but I agree with the 18 to 25 because we're getting valuable experience from it.
If I may, I certainly wouldn't want to detract from that. My vision, and you mentioned the word vision, vision is as much about expressing to people why we can't stay where we are as where we want to get to in the future. We can't stay where we are as a country for all sorts of reasons. And I'd love to see this whole thing right across the population. I mean, I'm ex-military, so, you know, I don't need to told young people are great young people. The young people joining the military today are fantastic. And I would say this, wouldn't I, that we're taking 20,000 of them out. We should be increasing the size of that, we should be increasing their capabilities, but also developing all that stuff. So I absolutely endorse what you're trying to do. I'm just trying to press the point that this is not, we can be more ambitious.
Actually, can I say one more thing? Because I think that where the United States is not very far along, and we all could work together to figure out some better models, is to get older people alongside younger people together trying to solve problems. Because just as we've got societal divides and race and wealth, we also have generational divides. And there's not, I can't even think of a great program model, maybe somebody else can, but I think that would actually be a really interesting thing to do.
It was an interesting point that Cyan made about the potential of this kind of program to tackle youth unemployment. Should we know either the panelists have anything?
Well, I'm very clear, and our independent research backs this up, that National Civil Service, which is just one program, but there are others, is absolutely helping make young people more work ready. And what I hope and believe, as we build this up and build the profile of this, as more and more employers see NCS on the CV or see CTE on the CV, they see the value of it, and it enhances their view of that young person when they see that, because the skills we're developing, and the skills that kids on NCS are really valuable, and they are the skills that make the difference. And we've got to work with employers for them to recognize that.
Yeah, absolutely. And City Year in the U.S. has arrangements with some of its corporate sponsors that any City Year Corps member automatically is going to get an interview. And it's the employers say, well, this is not a favor to you. We just know these young people are tremendously work ready. also when they're doing full-time service, they're not unemployed. So it does actually help with the numbers in other ways as well.
Can we take two questions here? There's a gentleman in the fourth row, and a lady 2 rows back. We'll come back to the others.
My name is Bob Clark. I'm the CEO of Mama Youth Project. We're an organisation, well, we're a charity, and we've managed to get 92% of young people into employment from the course that we do. And I just wanted to know the actual employment figures, because we as a charity are concerned about the employment. It's great giving work ready, but they need to get jobs at the end. And so that's what we do.
There's a lady 2 rows back.
Thank you. Tracy Fisher from Inclusion, a fairly linked question as well. I've come down from the Northwest for this event because I was just so interested in the power of volunteering, and we're trying to develop programs across Greater Manchester at the moment. I'm really interested in the link to tackling youth unemployment. And I'd like to know, if not too personally, but experiences of the young people who are up to the age of 24 who volunteer for a year, city year. How do they live? Are they claiming benefits? How does it actually work for them? And how does it fit with Job Centre Plus? If there are any examples or case studies of how that has been actually knitted together, I'd be really interested. Thank you.
Sophie, let's answer that.
I'm Sophie Livingstone, I'm Chief Executive of City Year in the UK. In terms of how young people live, they get, we fundraise to be able to give them £100 a week in expenses. They therefore can't sign on, so they're definitely not claiming job seekers allowance, but a large portion of them live at home while they're doing the service year. However, this year, interestingly, quite a significant minority have come from other cities in the UK to serve the city year, and quite a few are claiming housing benefit, and they are eligible to do that because they're volunteering full time, but they also supplement their income with working at weekends and evenings and that sort of thing. So we do our best during the recruitment process to almost put people off because they need to know how tough it is and what they're signing up for. But once they do it, they're really full on committed. And in terms of employment rates, we track the employability and the employment rates at the destination of our young people when they leave City Year. At the end of our first core, which was in 2010, 86% were EAT. At the end of their years in education, employment or training, and at the end of the 2011-12 core that graduated in July, 97% were EAT.
I think Sophie's.
Perhaps to Bob, first of all, congratulations. That's an impressive rate of success. Of course, you're right. Work readiness is one thing, but there have got to be jobs to be ready for them. The official statistics tell me that the private sector is beginning to generate the jobs in quite big numbers. In some areas, of course, public sector jobs are going as well. So net, some areas are not feeling it yet, but it's beginning to happen. And there's a huge amount of activity going on in terms of youth contracts and apprenticeship schemes to try and create opportunities for young people. So I think that is beginning to happen. It's probably slower than any of us would like, but it is beginning to happen. But I do come back to this. Let's not understate the importance of work readiness, because I've had too many conversations with employers who say, actually, too many of the kids coming out of school today are not quite what we want. They're missing some really important things. And I think as a society, we've got a responsibility to think about, well, how can we help the kids develop those kind of character skills? Because you and I know, just from our life experience, these skills are really, really important as we look at people that we work with or people we grew up with, and kind of what makes the difference between someone getting on and someone not getting on. It's very rarely just about academic results or anything like that. It's about something else.
I think that's how we've been successful.
Yeah.
I mean, probably the biggest thing we give people are work ethics, which is one of the biggest things. employers complain about when it comes to young people.
Yeah, reliability, all that.
Yeah, and understanding work ethics.
Yeah.
I noticed you said about university, which is from this space onto university. A lot of the young people that we want to engage, there's a lot that we work with. They're never going to go to university yet. And so they're not even looking that way, and sometimes get fed up with career advisors talking about what university you're going to go to.
We're going off to a tangent, but no, you're right. But actually what I detect is a lot more young people asking themselves tougher questions about whether they want to go to university, and that's not just about the tuition fee issue, although that's really cool. So it's beginning to shift a bit in terms of society.
Just on that university point, we actually published a report called Technical Matters a few weeks ago, looking at a proper alternative technical track to the academic university route, which I'd obviously recommend that you have a look at the website. I think it's some very interesting ideas. The gentleman in the third row has had them for a while, and the gentleman in the far corner.
Hello, my name's Andrew, and I'm a postgraduate student, but in my spare time I run a youth-led campaign on youth unemployment called The Found Generation. My question is mainly directed to the Minister, and picking up on the points you made, Minister, about work readiness. The title of this event, as I understand it, is National Citizen Service a Solution to Britain's Growing Needs Crisis? My argument would be, surely the question is the wrong one, and we should be asking, is encouraging people to volunteer the solution to Britain's growing needs crisis? And I think National Citizen Service is a big part of that, and I'm very, very pleased to hear all these things today, but that isn't the only thing. I think we need to talk about volunteering more generally, not just for young people who are not going through these schemes at the moment, but also those who haven't even had the opportunity to go to the National Citizen Service, like myself. The key point is, particularly in job centres specifically discourage you in many ways from actually going out and doing volunteer work when you're unemployed. And that is one of the big problems that needs to be tackled.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. When I saw, with respect to policy change, I saw the question, I think this is the wrong question, and as the Minister responsible for the programme, my answer is no. Of course NCS is not the answer to the need. It's a programme, and it's in an embryonic stage, 50,000 kids going through it this year, 1 million needs. It's one part of a conversation we should be having about exactly the same volunteering, service learning, social action, whatever term you prefer, to help young people raise their aspirations, but also helping some of the valuable skills that they're going to need. But it has to sit connected with everything else that we do, all of which are enormously important. I think I tried to say that at the start, but it's a new element that I think we should be thinking harder about.
Gentleman in the far corner.
My name is Peter Yosa. I'm a postgraduate research student. I also mentor young offenders. I'm also a member of the 100 Black Men of London, which helps empower young men in the community. You mentioned that the fact that it's not very, the program, the city year is not supposed to be compulsory. But my question, or maybe my statement, is, in fact, because I mentor young offenders, and the issue I have is that many of these young kids I work with between the ages of 13 to 19, and many of them are quite high offensive, they've committed quite high offenses, and they have problems with actually getting employed. Do you believe CTA will actually tackle that, or is it just a program that will just end up them doing it for 3 weeks, but there's no solution to the problems they're facing? And also, I just agree with the gentleman at the end. Sorry, I don't know your name. You want the panel? What's your name, sorry?
Andrew.
No, not Andrew. The guy at the panel. I agree with you. In fact, I think the issue about universities is many. I don't want to go on a tangent, but I agree that in fact that the problem that we face with many of the unemployment we have in Britain is because many of the polytechnics were changed into universities 20 years ago. In fact, they have vocational courses already. So I think, in fact, it was actually John Major's government that, even though I'm quite conservative, I think they brought on the problem of the unemployment we're facing now, 2 decades on. Yeah, so my statement is really, do you think the city year program will actually enhance the young offenders or young youths and employability skills?
My answer is
I believe doing City Year will enhance your employability skills for the third time, not in a rude way, like employability, presentation, like you get all these key competencies that you can, transferable skills that you can use in other areas of work. And if an employer was looking for people, like, they'll be silly not to take anybody from our team. Like Ed and Alex here, they set up their own policy event. They've had an interest and they set it up for their own initiative, and they set up something and they bring in speakers. And through City Year, moulded them and helping them do that. So I believe doing City Year will help them, but at the same time, like Sophie said, she tries to stop people from coming because she knows that it is tough. So it's a hard question, but I would sway to yes.
I'd like to respond, because in the U.S., there are definitely programs that are targeted to ex-offenders and people who have very significant challenges in the workforce. And YouthBuild is an example of one. And what they managed to do is combine a lot of different government funding streams into one program that just works especially well for hard-to-serve young people. So they take Americorps money to include a service component, and what we have is an education award at the end of your Americorps year to pay for a little bit of college. They combine money from the Department of Labor, from the job training funds, and sometimes they've had money from 7 or 8 different agencies and other funders, and they put it all together in a program that kind of surrounds a young person with a great mentorship, with education, with job training, and then the chance to give back to their own neighborhoods. And they get amazing results. And it was funny when we were talking about, young people who they're not going to go to university and they're sick of people telling them they should go. Well, YouthBuild takes a cohort that is so not your target, people you're thinking are going to university, and they're now starting to get, because they have their Americorps Education Awards and because they have such great support and mentorship, they're getting these kids who have spent their entire lives in poor communities, maybe have been court involved, maybe they have just had every setback, and they're going to university. So it takes a lot of resources in our system that's very siloed. They're one of the unique programs that is able to manage to put all this together. But it's really working for some of the hardest to serve kids that we have.
No, I mean, I can't comment on City because that's a specific question.
We've got time for, I think, one more round of questions. A lady over here has had a hand up for a while, and then 2 gentlemen here, and a lady back here as well.
I'm actually here, I'm from an organisation called Vision, and there's a few of us here tonight who got together and tried to do something kind of independently, because I think there's a rallying cry to everyone in this room, is that something the Minister said earlier on is there are a lot of people working in the sector, but the biggest challenge for all of us is how we all join up, because what we really need is character, but each one of our experiences on its own isn't going to be enough. And we've got an example at the moment where we ran NCS and we decided not to continue with it. I think it's a fantastic programme and it's got some really, really good stuff going for it. I think it's great at the social mixing, and I think all the stuff you said is really, really brilliant at. But we came at it from the longer term kind of social action aspect, and we decided that what we were really good at was the next step. So we've got over 200 people coming off NCS into our programme to do their own bit, and I'm hoping that we can get people off our programmes going to do City Year, and it's how we can get that trackway between all of us. So I have an idea, which is that actually what we all need to do is get together in this room and define, it's not rocket science, 6 core skills that employers want. What is character? 6 things. And we need a passport that young people can take with them from the age 10 to the age 20, and when they go from a job interview, they can collect little examples of all the things they've done with all of us. And it just takes a bit of collaboration. I honestly don't think it's that difficult. We just need that independent passport. And a really, really heinous idea might be, what about expanding the NCS brand to be a passport that covers all our diverse programs? And I wonder if there's any potential for that.
Yeah, because that's exactly what we're looking at. Not necessarily the last bit, because that's potentially quite difficult, but exactly everything you talked about before is exactly the conversations, the analysis that we're doing through Dame Judy to see whether we can stitch together the amazing programs out there. Because we talk about NCS because it's our program, we always talk about their shiny toys, but we're really aware that there's lots of brilliant stuff out there that just hasn't been joined up in an effective way. And also, we think that we kind of need to advocate, we need to campaign to make this stuff more relevant to the system, to schools, to employers, so that actually there's more of an understanding across the country about the value of social action, the value of service learning. And that's what we're talking about. Now you say that is the right challenge, that's the one way you said. Getting the voluntary sector to cooperate, in my experience as the Minister for 2.5 years and in shadow for 2 years, it's one of the bigger challenges that I've faced. But our moment is now, and actually there's a tremendous, you've expressed it briefly, there's a tremendous amount of goodwill, because I think people can see this is the moment to be serious about it.
Something really quick, I love your idea, and I think one of the reasons in the US that there's 700,000 applications for 80,000 Americorps positions is we have 64% of young people do service learning in their secondary school experience. So they've got they know what it is, they're excited about it, and I think that's one way you can have that pipeline.
There were 3 final questions. If we keep them quite sharp, as we're almost out of time.
John Morgan, Centre Forum. It's just a question about provision and delivery, really. And I was wondering what you thought about the role of the military and police services within delivering forms of national assistance service. And with particular reference across what was happening in the rest of Europe and Austria and Finland, for example.
Another one would be interesting.
Hi, I'm Matthew Dewey. I'm actually affiliated with City here. It's not much a question. What I want to point out is that I think this national assistance service thing actually kind of feeds back. I think we forget that the role models that City are in the schools is so important. So it won't be an issue of encouraging more people in the future to want to do NCS. They will be encouraged by the NCS growing in itself. Like, it will be a self-growing thing that just as more people do it, more people want to do it.
My name is Lucy, I'm a student, I'm also a writer for a website called YouthBuild. Just kind of a point I wanted to raise, just I think City here and sort of the volunteering programs are saying fantastic for the people that are helped, they're brilliant, but they're also part of the problem. Because sometimes when you're from a background where you're having trouble supporting yourself, and you know you have talent, you know that you can do something with your life, to see things like volunteering and to see things like unpaid internships is a slap in the face, because you can't do these things. So yeah, I just wanted to bring something.
Sure, if you want to take that one, we go down. Also, if anyone's got any concluding statements to make, then we'll have to close.
Okay, so quickly, first I just want to thank Policy Exchange for doing this. Put that at the top. This is a really wonderful conversation. I think in the U.S. we haven't had tremendous involvement from the military and the police in delivering programs. The National Guard has some youth programs, and there's some interest. I know around the world a lot of alternative civilian service comes out of compulsory military service countries, so probably some great, interesting precedents there. There's a debate going on in the U.S. on unpaid internships because, especially when they're coming from the for-profit side, it's a little different than when people are asked to respond with volunteer service that gives to others through nonprofit. So I would make a big distinction there. And people do it. There's so many people who want to do it. They're not getting paid much. They're getting paid even less here, and yet I know that you've got a demand. So I'm not sure what the problem is.
Can I respond to John? Yeah. This whole issue about the value that the services, police or military, could add in this context is an interesting one. What we've observed through National Citizen Service actually that in that week where they're sort of learning about community, where, for example, we've introduced them to servicemen and women, it's been one of the high points of their week, because many of them never touched their life, not part of their experience. They find them figures of inspiration. And there may be something for us to build on that, particularly as we think of troops coming home and all that, the role that people in services can play in terms of inspiring others to think of services, something we've barely touched on. But I think there's something of interest in that. But the point about volunteering and unpaid internships being a slap in the face, I think I sort of understand where that comes from, but I'm going to show you on that. I think we've heard directly about the value of City Year. I don't think anyone involved in City Year thinks that's a slap in the face. If you're saying that there are lots of kids out there whose priority is to get a job, yes, of course, totally understand that. But there are lots of reasons other than getting involved in volunteering and service community that go beyond just seeing it as a milestone into getting a job. There are lots of other reasons for doing it. It just so happens, in my direct experience, I'm absolutely clear that it helps improve the employability of a young person, and in the absence, temporary, I hope, of a job opportunity, it's a fabulous milestone on the journey into that job. And I don't think we should be dismissive of these things or use that kind of language, because it belittles an experience that for many young people that I've come across has been up to that point probably the most positive and best experience they've ever had.
I don't think it's... Sorry, what's your name?
Lucy.
Lucy, I don't think it's a slap in the face. I think it's a helping hand.
No.
I'm just saying, like, my team, we got offered jobs, but we just didn't want to take.
I'm not saying the experience is a slap in the face. I'm saying it's horrible when you want to do the experience, but you can't because you can't support yourself. So you know that you have the skills to do it and you want to contribute, but you just can't because you can't live. Yeah. Sorry. Should I make that clear?
But yeah, I think it's a helping hand. As I was going to say, like our team, we got offered, if we wanted to stay on, we could be teachers assistants. So it's a stepping stone for us, but we just don't want to be teachers. We want to do something else. So I think it's a stepping stone, really, just to sum it up.
Very sorry to say that we're out of time. Apologies to people who've had their hands up and we haven't been able to get around to it. I'm sure this conversation can continue after the formal event is finished. I think we've had three really good contributions to a very important topic. Can we thank all the speakers in the usual way?